It landed in my inbox at 9:42 a.m., just as I was stirring powdered creamer into the office's sorry excuse for coffee. The subject line read, "Strategic Compensation Realignment," a phrase so sterile it could have been lifted from a machine that writes apologies for corporations. I clicked it without thinking, expecting the usual quarterly waffle. But the moment my eyes hit the second paragraph, something inside me stiffened. Effective immediately, all salaried employees will receive a 12% reduction in base compensation as part of our ongoing initiative to improve operational efficiency. I stared at the screen, unmoving. No warning, no meeting. Just numbers on a line and a paragraph thanking us for our continued commitment. I read it again, then a third time. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. 12% wasn't enough to ruin me financially. I lived lean, walked to work, no car. Still used the same ThinkPad I'd built Foresight on 2 winters ago. No, the wound wasn't in the money. It was in the timing. We were 1 week from launching the biggest internal rollout in the firm's history, Foresight. My machine learning framework for probabilistic market modeling was already baked into the beta dashboards, humming under the surface. The execs had spent the last 3 town halls patting each other on the back for in-house innovation, and now they'd decided to cut the pay of the only person who actually wrote the damn thing. I minimized the email and just stared into the void of my dual monitor setup, the hum of recycled air punctuated by the occasional nervous keyboard tap across the open plan floor. I could hear someone whispering behind me, something about the cut. Confused, nervous laughter followed the kind people use when they're scared but trying not to seem it. They had no idea what was coming. I sipped the lukewarm coffee and opened my local dev instance. Foresight was stable, elegant, efficient, and most importantly, mine. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to storm into any rooms. All I needed was time. They'd handed me the knife, and now I was deciding where to cut first. By Friday, my badge still worked, but the temperature in the building had dropped. People avoided my eyes in the hallway. And that morning, I noticed Theo, my manager, standing outside HR. He didn't look surprised to see me. They didn't even have the spine to schedule a real meeting. The calendar invite just said, HR, room 2C, 11:15 a.m. No subject line, no attendees listed, just cold digital dread. Theo was already there when I arrived, seated in a chair too small for his tailored suit and too stiff to pass as casual. Across from him sat Candace from HR, her expression carefully neutral, the same one she wore during harassment trainings and layoff briefings. She gestured to the empty chair like she was offering a grave. I sat without speaking. Theo cleared his throat as if the act of forming words was some great emotional burden. Mireille, he began, voice low and measured. We've reviewed your recent behavior and feedback from several team members. Feedback. That was rich. Candace took over, her tone smooth but soulless. Given recent concerns around negativity, resistance to strategic direction, and disruption of team cohesion, we've made the difficult decision to terminate your employment effective immediately. I blinked once. Not in shock, in confirmation. No warning, no performance improvement plan. Just a dropkick in HR jargon. I didn't argue. I didn't ask who filed the complaints, though I could name 3 people who'd sell their conscience for a catered lunch. I simply leaned back, folded my hands, and waited for the rest. Candace slid a manila folder across the table. Your final paycheck, COBRA paperwork, NDA reminders. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. Theo shifted like he wanted to say something, maybe offer one of those half apologies that imply you brought it on yourself. But he didn't. I stood. My exit was silent, steady. No tears, no begging, no slammed doors. At my desk, I packed exactly one thing, a battered green moleskin notebook tucked behind my second monitor. Security hovered nearby, awkward. I nodded once to the few coworkers, pretending not to watch. The elevator ride down was quiet. When I stepped outside into the bright sunlight, I didn't look back. I just walked. Later that night, I flipped open the notebook, the spine cracking gently under my fingers. On the first page, initial sketch for Foresight Architecture, Feb 2, 1, 12 a.m., built on home server. The apartment was too quiet when I got home, the kind of silence that didn't soothe it echoed. I dropped the tote bag with my notebook on the floor and went straight for the filing cabinet under my desk. Middle drawer back folder, blue tab labeled Employment, signed. The contract was still in the same plastic sleeve from 3 years ago. 10 pages, 11-point font, legal boilerplate dressed up in performative friendliness. I skimmed through the first few sections, my pulse dull and even until I hit page 7. Clause 7.4, Intellectual Property Ownership. There it was. Any intellectual property developed substantially outside of working hours and without the use of company hardware or proprietary tools shall remain the sole property of the employee. I read it twice then, a third time aloud. I remembered the negotiation. HR wanted to cut it. I pushed back, said I often prototyped after hours, wanted a safety net. They let it slide, probably thinking it wouldn't matter, but it did. I reached for the notebook like it might vanish if I moved too slow. Page after page of handwritten diagrams, logic flowcharts, and optimization models, each dated in the corner in my tiny, precise print. Some pages were stained with coffee rings. A few had tiny smudges where I'd erased something in the middle of the night and reworked it again. Initial node pruning algorithm, 3, 09 AM hardware tests, home rig, rise and build, January logs archived locally, add predictive weight decay to Foresight Core. Tested pass. I flipped to the back cover where I'd scribbled server logs and git commit, hashes my own hardware, my own time, my own name. Not once did I touch company servers for any of the critical development. And I had the receipts to prove it. They thought firing me meant they owned everything I'd built. But they never understood what mattered most wasn't in their GitHub repo or shared drive. It was in this notebook, ink and graphite time-stamped genius. I set it beside my laptop, opened a clean spreadsheet, and labeled the top row proof assets. Then I opened a blank email draft and typed the first line, Hilary, it's Mireille. I've got something you'll want to see. Hilary replied in under 20 minutes. You're the last person I expected to hear from and exactly the one I needed. Coffee tomorrow. We met at a small cafe tucked behind a bookstore in the Arts District, the kind of place where nobody wore suits and the baristas wrote code between orders. Hilary was already seated when I arrived, laptop open chai and hand hair tucked behind one ear like it always had been back when I mentored her through that sleepless hackathon in Chicago 5 years ago. She didn't ask about the layoff, didn't offer condolences, just said, so. What did they mess up? I took out my own laptop and connected to my home server via VPN. The boot screen flickered, and there it was, Foresight in full. The clean UI, the lean architecture, the adaptive algorithm, still humming on test data. I'd been feeding it nightly. Full deployment, she asked. Running locally, sandboxed, updated as of last week. I tapped a few keys and ran a simulation. CPU usage dropped by 37%. Predictive models loaded 1.6x faster than baseline. The throughput chart spiked. Hilary leaned forward, eyes wide. You did this? Alone? I nodded. No corporate equipment, all off clock. And I have the clause to prove ownership. She didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then slowly, what are you looking for? Investment acquisition. Neither, I said. I'm licensing. Exclusively. You get first rights. No equity dilution. No sale. Hilary blinked, trying to read my angle. I'm not selling a product. I'm licensing an advantage I added. She leaned back and exhaled. Smart. Ruthless. Classic Cass. I closed the laptop. It's called Foresight. You can rebrand it, but it's mine. And if you want it, we do it clean up front payment royalty clause, strict use terms. She grinned. Send me the draft. I'll loop in legal by end of day. I nodded once, then stood to leave. Just before I walked out, she said they must be panicking. They will, I said, sliding my hands into my coat pockets. They just don't know it yet. That night, I watched the test logs run again from home, brighter somehow, like the system knew it was finally going where it belonged. The contract came back 3 days later, redlined and riddled with polite pushback. Their legal team had questions about scope, usage, rights, liability. I expected it. I welcomed it. I'd already anticipated every clause they'd try to bend. I opened the PDF on my second monitor and my spreadsheet of proof assets on the first. Everything they questioned, I countered. Every vague request for shared ownership was met with a firm reply: foresight remains wholly mine. The number I gave them wasn't high enough to scare them off, but it wasn't humble either. $75,000 upfront, 3% of net revenue on any product built with Foresight's core logic and strict limitations on derivative work. Hilary called later that evening. "They're dragging their feet," she said. "Not about the money, they're trying to figure out why you're not asking for more." "I'm not building an empire," I replied. "I'm building leverage." There was a pause. Then she said, "The CTO wants to meet." His name was Anders Quill. He wore monochrome suits and measured ROI per syllable. We met over video, no small talk, no jokes. He skimmed my terms, raised an eyebrow at the royalty clause, and said, "You're betting on performance, I always have." He looked down back at the numbers, then nodded. Approved. Just like that, it was done. 3 weeks later, the wire transfer hit my account. Clean sharp. The kind of money that once took a year to earn now arrived as a prelude. The contract was signed. The ownership was locked. Foresight, soon to be rebranded, was licensed exclusively to Vantacore under the new name Pulse Predict. I wasn't an employee. I wasn't an executive. I was something rarer, a silent owner of an unstoppable tool. No meetings, no status updates, just royalties and silence. When the final paperwork came through, I printed a copy and tucked it beside the notebook in my desk drawer. 2 artifacts of what they thought they could erase. I didn't toast or celebrate. I just watched the server logs pulse on my monitor and whispered, "Now we wait." Because somewhere across town, the other version of Foresight, the stolen one, was about to wake up without its heart. Pulse Predict went live with zero ceremony, just a quiet launch email, a sandbox link, and a clean API package that made engineers grin and project managers weep with relief. Within 2 weeks, 2 enterprise clients signed multi-year contracts. Neither had even returned my former company's last outreach. The integration team at Vantacore worked fast but carefully. They understood the system's nuance. They respected the sharp edges. Every module was reviewed, every optimization, explained nothing touched, unless they knew what it did and why it mattered. Meanwhile, across the city, the Frankenstein version of Foresight was being stitched together by people who didn't know where the brain lived. I heard from a former colleague, Devika, the only person who ever stayed late for real reasons. She messaged me from a burner account. Just one screenshot, a dashboard error from their client portal. Red warning banners everywhere. Her caption read, "The clone can't even handle regression loops." They'd tried to replicate what I built with what they thought they understood. Problem was, Foresight didn't just predict. It adapted, rerouted, rewrote its own logic in low-risk layers. It was elegant because it was lived and grown, not assembled. Their version buckled under pressure. Within a day, complaints started rolling in. Downtime, broken visualizations, misaligned datasets. One client threatened to walk mid-quarter. Theo was reportedly in panic mode, trying to shield the board from the reality that their internal solution couldn't even process stable input streams. I imagined him hovering over some poor junior engineer's shoulder, barking vague directives while pretending he understood what memory leak meant. Vantacore, meanwhile, pushed a minor update to Pulse Predict that shaved another 4% off runtime. Their marketing team quietly updated the case study landing pages. No flair, no taunts. But it didn't go unnoticed. By the end of the second week, a third client had reached out. someone who used to be one of ours. I watched from my apartment window that night city lights flickering against glass and thought they're not just losing code, they're losing ground, and the gap's only going to get wider. The next morning, my inbox lit up with a familiar name, Theo Wren. Subject line: thought we might catch up. It came in at 6:17 a.m., timestamped just early enough to pretend he was working hard and not panicking. The subject line read, "Thought we might catch up." I didn't open it right away. I made coffee, first folded laundry, fed my neighbor's cat. Let it sit there glowing like a landmine in my inbox. When I finally clicked, it was exactly what I expected. "Hi, Murray, hope you've been well. I've been following some of your recent work, impressive stuff. We're exploring new initiatives at the firm and would love to reconnect. There may be opportunities for short-term consulting or collaboration if you're open to it. Let me know if you'd be up for a coffee. All the best, Theo." The gall of it was almost artistic. This was the same man who sat across from me in HR and nodded along as they erased me, who stripped my name off the repo and whispered to the board about team misalignment. Now he wanted to grab a cappuccino and pretend we were colleagues again, like there hadn't been a knife between my ribs when I left that building. I didn't bother drafting a clever reply. I didn't need to. I pulled up my dashboard from Vantacore. The most recent royalty transfer, $412.690.52, had hit overnight. Q1 licensing revenue. Clean. Verified. Mine. I took a screenshot of the line item, cropped it tight. No explanation. No emotion. Just numbers. New email. Subject: does this look like I need the work attachment? Q1 royalty PNG, no greeting. No signature. I hit send. I sat there for a moment afterward, watching the message disappear into the ether. I imagined him in his glass office, squinting at the screen, his mouth going dry, as the reality settled in that I wasn't interested, that I didn't need him, and that maybe I'd already won. But as the sun edged higher across my windowsill, I realized something else. Winning silently was satisfying. But some stories deserved to be told. I didn't decide to leak everything out of vengeance. It was clarity. The kind that sharpens in the quiet after you've said no and meant it. I gathered it all slowly, meticulously, every page from my notebook scanned and dated, the full PDF of my employment contract with clause 7.4 highlighted in bright blue, email threads where I raised red flags about leadership's short-sighted roadmap, screenshots of Pulse Predict benchmarks next to the internal clone's crash logs, courtesy of a quiet ally who still worked on the inside. Then I wrote a short cover note. No drama, no accusation, just a timeline and attached evidence. The journalist was someone I'd followed for years, Ray Jansen, senior writer at TechSlate. She once dismantled $1 billion crypto scam with nothing but leaked Slack messages and 2 verified spreadsheets. I knew she'd know what to do. I created a new Proton Mail alias, encrypted the zip file, and hit send. Then I waited. 48 hours later, the headline dropped, "They fired her." Now her algorithm is devouring them. It led with the clause, followed by screenshots of the architecture diagrams in my handwriting, juxtaposed against the performance collapse of my old employer's rushed copycat. Ray didn't hold back. She interviewed anonymous sources, quoted industry analysts who called Pulse Predict a category-defining technology, and ended the piece with a brutal line. The engineer they labeled disruptive is now disrupting them with interest. By noon, it was trending on Twitter. By 3, it hit the front page of Hacker News. Reddit threads were already dissecting the commit logs and praising Engineer X as a case study in quiet revolt. I didn't refresh the article page. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my royalty dashboard. New contracts were already pending. CTOs from companies I'd once dreamed of working for were now requesting meetings, but I didn't answer them yet. I closed the laptop and stood by the window watching as the wind picked up across the street. The storm hadn't hit them yet. Not fully, but it was coming. By the end of the week, the second client announced they were pulling their contract quietly, professionally, but unmistakably. The first had left days earlier, citing unresolved technical concerns. Internally, I knew that meant the clone had buckled again, this time during a live client demo. Industry forums were already lighting up with speculation. No one named names, but everyone understood who the legacy platform provider was. The timing, the tech, the collapse, it all pointed back to them. Within days, the exits began. Mid-level engineers started updating their LinkedIn profiles. A senior product manager posted a vague goodbye with just enough edge to read like a confession. The stock dropped 41% by close of day Thursday. I didn't smile. Not yet. On Friday morning, a second email from Theo arrived. Subject: rebuilding bridges, Emire. In light of everything, we want to acknowledge past mistakes and extend a formal apology. We'd value the chance to reconnect and explore ways we might collaborate again. If you're open, we'd love to schedule time to discuss opportunities for a return on your terms. Sincerely, Theo. I read it once, then closed the tab without responding. There was nothing left to say. I walked to the window and pulled the blinds open. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood, quiet and unbothered. My laptop screen pinged behind me. I turned back and opened the Pulse Predict dashboard. Quarterly royalties received $612, $344.89. It didn't surprise me. Vantacore had just signed a government analytics contract. The licensing clause kicked in the moment the first model deployed. The money wasn't the point, not really. What mattered was the message, that I didn't have to return, that they'd already paid the price. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the street come alive below. Somewhere maybe Theo was in a boardroom trying to spin numbers that refused to listen. And I was exactly where I chose to be. Still. Sharp. Unshakable. Because the most dangerous kind of revenge was the kind that didn't knock. It just lived. I passed the building on a whim, not because I missed it, just to see if it was still standing. It was. Same polished stone exterior, same stiff logo bolted above the revolving doors, like nothing had changed. But through the tinted glass, I saw the truth. Empty desks, tired eyes, a receptionist scrolling without focus. The energy inside was hollow, like something important had been scooped out, and no one dared say it aloud. I stood across the street for a moment, hands in my coat pockets, watching people file in and out. A young guy in a wrinkled blazer checked his phone, muttered something sharp under his breath. I wondered if he was reading the TechSlate article, or maybe the leaked internal memo now circling forums, the one confirming the Foresight clone had been scrapped indefinitely. 3 years ago, I would have walked through those doors carrying a backpack, an idea, and a hope that someone would notice. They did eventually, but only when it was too late. I turned away and walked 3 blocks to Vantacore's pop-up launch event. The banner out front read Pulse Predict, the new standard in predictive intelligence. Inside, LED walls scrolled through live case studies. Demo stations buzzed. Clients and engineers shook hands over projections I'd optimized alone at 2 a.m., with a cracked monitor and cold noodles on my desk. One slide caught my eye, white text on a dark background, powered by core logic architecture MCAS. No more erasure, no more buried footnotes, just the work. My name, where everyone could see it. I stepped back outside as the event carried on without me. I didn't need applause. I didn't want their gratitude. I'd taken what they tried to strip away and made it undeniable. They once called me disruptive like it was an insult. Now my royalties are cleaning up their balance sheet.